I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, Velocities in Music, the best kept secret in music reviews. You guys play a huge role in what we do here at Velocities in Music, and this album is one that you guys, we've had so many requests for Foxygen's We Are the 21st Century Ambassadors of Peace and Magic. This, Tom, how would you describe the sound on this album?
I could basically just describe it with a laundry list of bands from the 60s and 70s.
Go ahead.
I feel like. All right. Well, I mean, first off, you can tell these guys are pulling a lot from the Rolling Stones and the Beatles. More of the Rolling Stones and the Beatles, but I mean, right away in track 1, In the Darkness, it's like they're trying to open it how the Beatles opened Sgt. Pepper.
Yep.
It sounds a lot like that. Just in the songwriting style, the vocal presentation, some of the arrangements and instrumentation that they're using. I also get a lot of Bob Dylan in the vocals, and Bob Dylan's later work when he started to move away from just the acoustic folk sound on some of his later albums, maybe like late 70s and even 80s work. But also there were some tracks on here brought out a big Velvet Underground vibe, tracks like San Francisco. I got a big Stooges vibe from the title track, track 8, and even some more contemporary bands that are doing this kind of sound, like MGMT's most recent album, Congratulations.
Tame Impala?
Tame Impala, oh, totally, especially in that last track. Right. So Beatles-esque.
Right. I think that throughout this whole album, which, you know, I feel like is a very well-written album, a well-composed album. I think that the strongest thing, if you look at any individual track, you're going to go, wow, this is a very well-written track, well-presented. But, you know, when you put these things as an album and what the statement is as an album, you come away with a different message than if you were to just take one track at a time.
Definitely, yeah.
And I think that that's due to the fact that you can quote how so many influences. And I think that that's the most troublesome thing to me when first jumping into this album, which actually I liked this album. I felt like this was a very enjoyable listen. It's just overall, you know, you have to kind of weigh out the exposure that you have. If you've listened to a lot of the bands that Tom mentioned, and specifically the newer artists that are coming out right now, you know, there's so many similarities there that you have to ask, you know, is this sound so diluted? Like, what are they bringing to the table?
Exactly.
Is this creating a defined sound for Foxygen? There's
There's nothing wrong with going for this sound, but I still want to hear a more individualized, unique flair. What are you bringing to the table that's different?
Which I would argue both MGMT and Tame Impala accomplish.
I think so too. I think these guys stick a little bit too close to home, close to that safe zone. When I listen to this, the way I would put it is that I get more of an idea of who Foxygen's influences are than who Foxygen is.
Right.
And so I want to hear more of that flair. What makes Foxygen Foxygen rather than just all these bands that they obviously draw influence from? Now, like I said, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. It's just where you take it.
Right.
I agree with you. I think these songs are terrifically written. I think they pull them off really well. A couple of the highlights of the songwriting for me is just the vocal diversity, how he's able to bring all these different levels of intensity and make them match the mood and the intensity of the instrumentals, especially with cool times changes and cool tempo changes. They work those seamlessly into these tracks, and it really makes for a more engaging listen and more movement within the songs and the album as a whole. I think that they pull that off really well. But still, I want to know what makes them them. I want to know what you know brings out that individualized kind of personality of the album.
Yeah, you mentioned the vocalist personality that he adds, and I think that coupled with a really good songwriting on every track is what makes it's you know the significant portion of the good things that you're hearing on this album, because you know we're talking about bird's eye view kind of just assessments of what the sound is, but if you look at the track 2, No Destruction, and you listen to two things. One, the dynamic contrast between the vocals and instrumentation between the beginning of the song and the end of the song. You can tell these guys are very crafty when it comes to when they write their songs. The other thing is the vocalist adds so much personality. I swear he is Mick Jagger on that track. You know, he's doing such a good job, and honestly, it sells it. So you know, whether or not it sounds like a cover of the Stones or not is another thing. But the point is that he does it well. Yeah. One thing I have to say, I thought this album flowed actually pretty well. There's one little hiccup. The track 3 on Blue Mountain, I love that track. It is just a fantastic track. Yeah. It's just a fun, really kind of an anthem, and just gives the album so much life. Then you go into track 4, San Francisco, which to me, as you mentioned, kind of sounds like the Velvet Underground, but it doesn't fit on this record where they put it. I don't know where you could put it. It just doesn't feel like it fits on this record whatsoever. It's a good track. I like it.
Yeah.
But
I'll agree with that. I actually really liked it as an individual track, but
it doesn't fit, and it definitely doesn't deserve, the spot after On Blue Mountain. That's something where you'd see something more transitional or something more moody to give contrast. I wouldn't expect to see San Francisco, which is such a jarring, in a bad way, difference in something.
Yeah. I totally agree.
Overall, I think that there were several clear highlights on this album. It's a solid album. I want to see more definition in the sound. I want to see more of who Foxygen is. I want an actual album from them rather than just some amalgamation of their influences.
I totally agree. I totally agree. I mean, what they do really well, but it just feels a little bit rehashed and repackaged.
Still, I can see myself coming back to this.
Oh, I definitely do too.
Yep, I found it to be, it's not of the same caliber as both Tame Impala's album, Lonerism, and MGMT's Congratulations from a few years ago. But I feel like, it's not quite there, but a step down, and still in that solid range. Tom, what are you giving this one?
I'm giving it a 75.
I'm gonna go one more higher. I'm gonna go 76.
All right.
I think this is a solid album. Other than those really minor criticisms that we said, that's the only thing keeping this out of around an 80 for me. What did you guys think? I know you guys are loving it. So and you may even agree with some of the things that we said, and you may still love it, and that's totally cool. If you guys are loving this one, tell me everything that you love about it at www.velocitiesmusic.com or youtube.com/velocitiesmusic. Follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook. This is where we heard from you guys that you wanted us to review this album, so thank you for your participation. I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, moving music critique forward.
But you don't love me, that's news to me. That's news to me.